What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Devs Like Us. I'm Clarence.
JB.
I'm Terrence.
Today we have a special guest with us. A good friend of mine. He goes by the name Alan. He's a software engineer. A little bit of a background of him. He graduated from Old Dominion University with a Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science, and then got his master's in computer science from Virginia Tech, and now is just a well-rounded software engineer, doing a lot of great things. Welcome.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Hey, Alan.
Thank you.
Got the Monarchs, got the Hokies here.
Yeah. This is two ODU people back to back. I guess
our Norfolk State numbers up.
It's all the same area, so we still show love. But I guess we could y'all ready to just kind of jump right on in.
Let's do it. Let's deep dive.
Do it.
All right, so I guess first off, starting off, would you like to share with us kind of like your story as far as what got you into computer science or at least software development?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of a long tale, but actually started in high school with TI-83 calculators. I don't know if they still have those for you guys, but
yes.
trying to get through my physics class, programming in physics equations in there, and little rudimentary guess the number game, and out of that kind of got interested into doing static websites with Angel Fire.
Okay.
I don't know. That's probably way before you guys, but and then I went to college. I did an undergrad at Virginia Tech for English first, and while I was there, they actually do a program for the English majors where they teach them how to do technical writing.
Okay.
And so you have to create a blog website and manage content for a static web page. And I was like, I'm more interested in doing this stuff than writing, so I need to get into that. And figured out it would have taken me longer to graduate there. And so I decided I'll just graduate and see what the prospects are for a job. And then I got out in the job market with an English degree and was like, oh, this is ridiculous. I'm going back to school. Went to ODU, and I haven't looked back since. I got my undergrad in computer science, and yeah, it's been awesome. It's been just really good so far.
So I guess go ahead, JB.
So real quick, so you talked about how you were doing static web page development and management when you were in your English degree. How was that transition for you when you got to ODU and you were doing, the base level computer science work of, transferring into that programming field?
Good question.
I didn't really feel like it was that bad. I get what you're saying. It's a big difference between going from static HTML and CSS to doing introductory Java. And I guess at ODU they do C++, but yes. And actually, I guess I felt like it was easier just because I could focus on it and not have to do all the fluffer courses that you inevitably get put through in college. And so I think that made it a lot easier of a transition.
Nice.
So I guess I got a follow-up question. I know I probably asked this plenty of times, but coming from an English background and you're going into computer science, where a lot of people go to computer science because they don't want to write. How is that as a kind of meeting those folks?
Yeah, it's two different worlds. I went from being with artsy kind of,
latte art coffees and all that stuff, and
yeah, man, it was very an eclectic group to mostly just people that are they're very business oriented, very quiet, very introspective, very different crew. Not to say those people aren't sociable once you get to know them, but they're a lot shyer, than because you've got on the English side, you've got writers and you've got poets and you've got actors and actresses and all these different personalities that are very in your face kind of deal. And then going over there, it was very different. That's a good question. Yeah, it really is. There's a difference for sure.
Do you believe being in both worlds at different points of times has benefited you in your career?
I don't know. That's something I've always kind of suspected that actually has helped me out, like being able to have a conversation in an interview. Like if maybe I'm not the most strongest technical candidate, you can still kind of make the interviewer feel comfortable with you. And also, I think I don't know, they haven't proven it yet, but I think one day they'll come out and they'll be like, actually, it turns out English facility with language is actually very good for programmers to have.
That good stuff.
I did have one segue. So, being another kind of like, I guess, English, and I know this isn't all about the English side, but, you mentioned like poets and stuff. Have you come out with the algorithm to write poems, and they just produce it and read it out to folks?
No. Did you just ask that question, Clarence?
Yes, I was curious. I was just kind of curious, just to kind of mesh both worlds together, like, bam, take that, English majors. I'm able to write code that produces poems better than yours. But
yeah, it's kind of choppy on my end.
Oh. Before Alan answers that question, I want the audience to know that we kind of collaborate on a list of general questions, and then the guests are able to see it, to lead to ease the nerves and everything. And Clarence just threw this completely out of nowhere.
I just like to ask, I told him I like to ask random questions. You never know what you might get out of it.
Yeah, that was very random.
So I guess back to the more business side of things then, since my question was out of this world. So my next question is, what languages are you currently using, or what are there any languages that you're learning?
C# and TypeScript are what I use on the day-to-day right now.
Okay.
So doing and I guess SQL Server, if you want to include that.
Okay.
Doing a lot of .NET framework stuff, so web development.
Ooh.
All the fun stuff.
Isn't that the fun stuff? I thought it was the boring stuff nobody wanted to do.
Oh. I guess it depends on who you ask, right?
Yeah.
Alan, do you find yourself following the language, or do you kind of follow the problem, or are you just open to kind of doing whatever the folks at work ask you to do? Do you have any favorites where you're kind of seeking out certain, because I know some people, like if they're doing Ruby on Rails, like that's all they're looking for. If they do React, like they're looking for very specific languages and frameworks. Do you kind of abide by that same mindset, or do you more so look for the I guess the certain just kind of like certain problems, or you're just open with the product or the I guess the area of a company and whatever area they're in? Like, do you have any preferences when it comes to that?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would say no. I don't. Lately, what I've been doing, I think, is more of sticking to languages. So I'm looking kind of at the market and gauging what's popular, what kind of things do people need? Like, do people need React devs? Do people need .NET devs? Do they need PHP devs? And what frameworks do they need in that? And I'm kind of gauging that. It's probably a terrible answer, but I think that's kind of just real.
I think that's
an honest answer.
No, that's honest, because for me and from my background, that's one of the reasons why I think separates, and doesn't separate everyone, but separates kind of, if you have that theoretical foundation that college tries to give you, it might not have the best hands-on foundation, but it definitely, you have, regardless, there's still the same algorithm, different data structures are data structures regardless of what language you implement them in. And so I think that's definitely beneficial, where you can look at the job market and say, well, if they're paying X developers this amount of money, then okay, I'll go that. Or if this language is dire, or there are not as many developers willing to code in this language, but they're paying top dollar, hey, you can do that and be okay with it. So I think that's definitely good for the listeners to hear that, if you have that foundation, that theoretical foundation, that comp sci foundation, that makes that a lot easier. Not saying you can't do that in a non-traditional route, but in my opinion, from what I'm hearing from a lot of people that are doing the boot camps, it's really tied heavily to a language, that the data structures and all the additional comp sci academic type foundations, they're not, it's hard for them to fit that into a couple months.
I think that's a good little. Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, you go ahead, Clarence.
I was gonna say, I guess what I was gonna say is, I think that's a good point that you made as far as like kind of seeing the trends with the market. We've mentioned on the show before. You kind of have like your toolbox, and you're filling things in with it as you go. And one of those is kind of being versatile because as languages phase out or projects change, like you never know when you might need to be quick and adaptive to learn something new so that you could keep yourself employed or at least kind of keep yourself relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. I would actually, I see your point there, Terrence, and I'm interested that perspective is the one that you've heard about the boot camps, because I've actually kind of been playing around with the idea lately. Like I almost feel that college is maybe not the right kind of preparation for the job market, or I should say it's I don't want to say over preparation, but
For sure. No, it is definitely not. It's not a focused computer science topic.
Yes.
It's like this. You're becoming. Hopefully, I guess it all depends on your mindset when you're going through school. A better, I guess, overall. You're supposed to be a better overall person, not overall person, but I guess skill set wise, right? You're supposed to be better, like well rounded. But from my opinion though, and again it does it depends too on what boot camp you're taking. I do feel as though college, and I guess everyone's experience is a little different. It's definitely heavy on like the paper. Like you have labs and you have implementations, but they're really like you're starting that code. And I know we're talking about legacy code, and this probably is a good segue into that. Your projects are very like, this is a problem, you code it up and you start it. Whereas legacy code is, oh, this body of work has been living for 10 plus years, and all the people who started are no longer here. And this is a critical system. Keep it running, and we need new features.
yeah.
And it's in whatever language you want to call it, right?
And that wasn't taught in class at all.
That, like, to me, like, you don't get that in college, but you do get you get the fundamentals, but you have to apply it, right? And I think that applying part is what separates the people in college. The good developers that come out of college versus the not so good is those who just stick to what the teachers tell them, and the small projects, and those who really go out into the world and look at these open source projects or these big time like products and apply it there. Because you really end up hitting your head on the wall when you try to apply it there. And it's a slow process. It's really like you thought you were running because you got an A on your comp sci projects and stuff, but it's like, no, like implementing or adding, even if it's not legacy code, contributing to like one of these open source projects from Google or any company that's just huge, being able to take that, dissect it, see what's going on, how does it function, which services are communicating with other services, is a skill in itself. And it's not even fair for colleges to be able to try to teach that. It's really like you have to have experience with it, right? And you just have to like code every day, and not just code every day, but look at these type of systems right every day, or the code of every day is in my opinion. So I do agree that like I don't believe college prepares you necessarily to be like the best coder. I think it gives you the fundamentals or the theories behind what's going on. And they're two totally different worlds. You can know theories on paper all day. But like you gotta be able to implement it, right? So
yeah, that's true. Sure. That's true.
Definitely.
So I just did your segue, Clarence.
Yeah, I was gonna say perfect segue. I was gonna let you take it from there. I was just gonna sit back and wait for you to ask the next question.
All right, back to engineering. Stuff is working. I'm sorry.
No, I love it. It's nice. No, so I guess perfect segue to our actual topic, which is legacy code. And so I guess like, what's kind of your experience with legacy code? What's your big thought on it? Just dump it all.
Yeah, so I mean, every job I've worked at has been, dealing with legacy code. I think that's one of the failures of college in general, is to kind of get people in that mindset of understanding like you're not going to be, for the most part, a lot, like 80% of the job market is legacy code jobs. You're not going to be going out there doing greenfield development right away. I mean, there's obviously opportunities for it, but it's very unlikely that your average developer is going to go out there and do a Facebook startup right out of the gate kind of deal.
Right.
Or they're going to be I think, gosh, most of the people in my graduating class wanted to be game developers. They did a poll, like just like informal, like raise your hand if you want to do this. And it was like game development. And I was like, me and like 3 other students were like, didn't have our hands raised. They're like, what do you losers want to do? Like, I was like, I want to be a web developer. Some guy was like, I want to be a network admin. And we were like, wow, we're just weird, I
guess. I guess that's where all the new stuff is at. Because I do remember like a lot of people, especially after college, like that was their big thing: game development. And it was just like finding a way. And I know I actually got a chance to dabble with it, and I just felt like it was no real promised land there at all.
No, yeah, that was like your master.
During your phase of
yeah, it was my master.
That was during his phase of I don't like programming though.
Yeah, it was. No, it was an even bigger industry to get in. I'll say this, and I think that it wasn't very steady because in a normal job market, you kind of have some type of security, but like with game development, you can work on a game for 4 years and not sell a game at all, and then like now your company is like, well, do we try something else? But you've run out of all of the funds that you had, so you're kind of like just treading water at that point. Like I don't even see land anymore.
Or you can work for EA Sports or one of those folks, and then your game's coming out.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. But back kind of to go back though, they've been in the game for so long. I'm pretty sure, even though they probably have a ton of upgrades, I'm pretty sure a lot of that's legacy code.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so, it's all about connecting to the game engine and stuff. A lot of stuff. The legacy portion is really just the game engine and all that stuff. But yeah.
So Alan, do you believe that legacy code, ties in with technical debt, or do you think those are two separate topics?
No, absolutely, yeah. Like your technical debt is going to be your legacy code is going to be a big factor in how much technical debt you have. But I think it's important to like maintain a sense of practicality. So, one of the things that I fell prey to when I came out as a rookie software engineer was I wanted to object orient all the things. I wanted to unit test all the things, and like most of the engineers there had been working for like 30 years at my first job, and they were like, we don't do that.
We don't do any of that.
Yeah.
They're not.
We don't do that here. I'm sorry, that was really funny.
You
it
hear that?
Face, I saw whoever you were talking about. I saw it in your face. Like,
now I'm that guy, right?
His face will tell it all.
And you just come out and you want to like make all these things perfect, and it ends up, I think, hurting you, and because it's not practical in a lot of cases, or you'll make this really shiny independent component and nobody else can use it, or nobody else will use it, even if they could figure out how to use it. So you really do have to kind of balance it. I guess how much you feel that you have technical debt, because I guess there is actually like objective measures for technical debt. So, but how much you want to pursue that technical debt in your legacy code versus how much you just kind of accept that the legacy code is not going to be perfect, but it gets the job done and it pays the bills.
Right. I think you brought up an interesting point, or kind of a question of mine, is that when you come out of school, you're coming off of like doing a lot of maybe some cool things, maybe some stuff that you weren't used to, but like, you come out of school, you're hot, ready, ready to tackle on the world. And then like they give you this code to look at that you'd never seen before. I think the scenario is, like the person that did write it, they either retired. And I think I've said before in some other episodes, they passed away. We've seen that. And so like, how does that affect your drive, or how does that coming out of school, like, does that just put the fire out right away? Does it spark a new interest? What's your thoughts?
I don't know. I don't know if I can talk for everybody, but at least for me, I was very passionate about programming. And when you go through, like, for the computer science program at ODU, I felt was pretty rigorous and kind of lights a fire under your butt to be really good. Like, they want you to be good. They want you, they want people to say good things about ODU devs. Um, and I think it is kind of demotivating when you get into the job market and you find out, like, oh, this is all legacy code. Like, nobody really cares about, 90%, like, nobody cares about shell sort. Like, in my
Right.
in my SAP report,
Yeah.
nobody cares about that. They just want to see numbers on the page. Like, it's that simple. And you don't, and I don't know that it demotivates you to work in those positions for sure. You kind of get the itch and you're like, I gotta go. Like, I can't just take this. But I think after a while, like, once you've, like me, I mean, this is like my fourth job, maybe my fifth job. I've hopped around enough now where it's kind of like I'm very much embracing it, embracing the legacy code part as like, now this is something where this is actually a skill that you can sell, that you can monetize this ability to go into a new code base, understand it, and tell your employer, like, this is what I bring to the table, and this is why I'm not a risk.
Right. Right.
Have you, Alan, have you ever been had the opportunity or been asked for, to, I guess, modernize a legacy code, or maybe the functions that they've done? Have you had the opportunity to do those at all?
I think deep down, every software engineering manager knows that they want to do that, and that's always like a discussion in the interview process. But inevitably, it rarely ever happens. I mean, I guess I've been on one job where they actually, they asked me to come in and assess their code base and do a little bit of, they were using vanilla technologies for everything. They were doing a web stack. It was all vanilla PHP, vanilla JavaScript. And they kind of asked me to, like, put it in a framework and maybe add some tests around it. And you start doing that and things are going well. And then it's like, oh, you're doing a really good job, but we need this new feature in, this hairy part of the legacy code that would take one dev, 2 months. And we think you guys together can knock it out in half the time or something like that. So there's always the best of intentions to do that.
Did you have a question?
I have a question to follow up on what he was talking about.
Oh, go for it. I'm sorry.
So Alan, in the statement that you were talking about where, they asked you to do the evaluation and do, a whole rewriting things, did that kind of, lessen your motivation when they're like, yeah, you're doing a great job, but, we really need this thing? Or how was that for you? Because I've had experiences where people come to me and they'll be like, hey, we have this code and, it's working, but it's not the best. And so we need you to evaluate, do a complete rewrite, things like that. And I get through it and someone say, like, yeah, this is great, but, there's still some refactoring that needs to happen. And so, for me, that situation is, kind of different from yours because I got the chance to go all the way through. But for you, you didn't really get the chance to finish, the thing. And so, like, did that kind of bring your mood down, essentially?
No, I think at this point, I kind of just treat it more as part of the profession. I think it's one of those, It's one of those little gems that, again, you don't get prepared for in college. You kind of have a misconception that every project is like this sweet little discrete package that you build from scratch and you deliver it. And just, real software engineering is actually very messy, it seems.
Yes.
I think that's a good point, because I feel like, I know from the experience I've had from kind of jumping around, I used to joke with some of my team members, and, like, we would sit in these town halls or kind of like, the big meetings, and, like, you see all of this cool stuff, like this front end page that looks like really awesome. I mean, customers are using it and whatnot, and we're all sitting there like, well, our stuff will never look that good, or like it just doesn't fit that, like that image. So it's like, it's kind of like when you think about looking for job opportunities, it's like, is there a different wording for, like, prime time development versus just kind of like taking on, the legacy part of things, or just kind of adding on to something that's already there that that doesn't get the same shine. Have you kind of noticed that, in your career journey?
Yeah, I think they refer to it as greenfield, or I've heard of it referred to as like greenfield development, where you're going to be using all the latest technologies. You're going to be working with like a modern team, and yeah, like I said, I think I've been on one team where we did that, and the project I canned kind of, I think, because our users ended up delaying on their need for that particular application. But
Gotcha.
Oh, and so did y'all have any? I know I'm jumping right into it. I'm getting on my question train. So one interesting question that comes to mind is, when you think of legacy code, and I know we've experienced this firsthand. So, I just want to get our listeners a chance to kind of get what you thought about it. But legacy code and agile, do those two things go together? Have you seen that it works seamlessly, or have you seen it just be a total wreck?
this is a tough one, because agile is such a loaded term. It's so subjective. I think everywhere you go, it's different what it means. And I've seen it be pretty awful in like 75% of cases. But I've also seen where if you can make some tweaks to it and maybe accept that you're not going to be able to do everything like the true Agilista way, maybe it's not so bad with legacy code. But I definitely understand. It does seem as though Agile is catered very much towards that, new kind of delivering new features in a lot of respects. But we saw that. Yeah, we saw that firsthand. Like that could be a culture question, though. Honestly, I don't know how much of that is legacy code and how much of that is culture.
I got you.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because I was gonna say, like, I had a office that I was a part of, and we had this new contractor come in, and they're like, yeah, we're doing the agile way, like, we're doing our stand-ups and da da da. And like probably about a month in, he's like, you guys know this isn't really agile, right? And it was just like, it was like the room just went dead silent, because it's just like, I mean, we're trying our best here. And like me at the time, I was like an intern, just, kind of passing through. And I'm just like, I mean, yeah, I knew this wasn't agile, but this is how they were operating. So it's like, if this is how, you're operating and it works for you guys, it works for the majority of people, I'm just kind of like, okay, if it works type of thing. But yeah, it really did not work for me, because like when I came in, they're like, all right, since we have you for a limited amount of time, we're going to have you do this one big feature on this legacy code piece. And it'll be really great because this is something new that a bunch of our customers want. I'm like, all right, cool. That sounds great. And then I got into it. I'm like, this is horrible. And so like, that was like my worst introduction into legacy code, because of the fact that it was like a third party piece of code, and like the people who wrote it, I feel like they all learned polymorphism, and then they just took it to the extreme. It was like, we're going to put polymorphism on top of polymorphism on top of polymorphism. So then it's like, yeah, we need you to, edit this piece of the code. Well, this piece of code is like a piece of code that is referenced in like 10 like files down type of thing. And so it's like, you want me to be agile, but with something that is very convoluted. And so, yeah, it just wasn't a great experience for me. But, if the culture of the office works for you, which is also a thing, because if you're just not a good mesh with that culture of the office, then it's going to be very hard to get into the flow of things.
Right.
So like the agile way that they were doing in the time in that office worked for them. And for me, coming from a different office set, it was just like, yeah, this isn't going to work at all. So yeah.
What tech stack was that, out of curiosity, the legacy piece that you had to deal with?
So I was working in C code, like a lot of C code.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh.
And So yeah, and that was like after working with a bunch of like Python and Java before that. And so just making that transition, there was a lot of mistakes of like, because I was very heavy on the Python, a little on the Java. And so it was a lot of things. I'm like, why is this not working? And it's just me forgetting like my semicolons or like, my braces or something. But just seeing that much polymorphism happen, because I'm like, with the theory that you get in college, like there's certain topics that, they just don't have time to cover. So it's like they'll give you like the high level of what this particular topic is, and then they kind of move on. And so for polymorphism, I'm like, when I first saw it, I'm like, I've seen something like this before, but I can't remember what the name of it is. And I'm going looking up, like searching. I'm like, what is that polymorphism thing that they were talking about? And then just trying to like traverse down the line of things and just like, this is horrible. I don't think this is what they intended when they started with polymorphisms. So yeah.
Oh man.
So I do have a question, and it's kind of I think it should be a little fun. So with all the legacy code, legacy code that's out there, does anything with like the people starting now to try to do a better job of having microservices? Do those kind of excite you moving forward, or saying like, hey, one day maybe, we won't have these monolithic architectures, which and that not saying that all legacy code bases are these big monolithic architectures, but they seem to lean that way a lot more than what you would see your greenfield developments. With those who are thinking long term, kind of going, a lot of times we're trying to make sure the services are broken out enough to where it's easy to plug and play with these services that you're building. Any excitement there or any interest there as far as like based off of all the legacy experience that you have now with kind of like the new cutting edge type architecture? Well, not cutting edge stuff has been around for a long time. I guess it's just being talked about more with cloud and stuff. But are there any technologies that are like really bringing interest to you? Like, because like I feel like you've lived through the pain of like having to maintain all these legacy systems.
That's a good question. You'd be surprised. So you're right. These technologies are not new in any way, but they're not as widespread as I thought they'd be. I was actually really excited when I first heard about microservices and splitting out so you can get dedicated front end work and dedicated back end work and dedicated API work, etc. But my experience, I've seen that in one project that I've worked on, and it was done extremely well. It supported Agile very well, and yeah, that kind of, when you see it in action like that, it was I guess, what tech stack were they using? I think they were on AWS, using TypeScript and a Java backend. I guess Java Enterprise. I'm not familiar with all the Java web frameworks, but it's exciting. But at the same time, my sense of, I don't want to call it pessimism, but I guess that's really what it is. I'm kind of pessimistic. I'll be happy to dive into that when I land in a long-term project where I get to do that.
Gotcha.
Makes sense. All right. So I guess last question. So you've been working with legacy code for a while. How do you become familiar with it? Like what kind of prep work does it take? What all goes? What's the whole process of kind of getting yourself immersed into it?
Yeah. So I think it's pretty simple. Usually, what I do personally is I just go. So I'm usually doing web development. So I just take one slice of functionality. So you maybe look through some old tickets and you find a trouble ticket and you look at the code that was used to implement it. And then you trace through that workflow in the UI and you track it all the way from the front end to the back end to the database and then all the way back again. Usually that's a pretty good indicator of the style of the kind of things you're going to see. But the absolute best thing that got me oriented on legacy code was my manager at one of my jobs actually sat me down and did a one-on-one walkthrough. Like he said, all right, here's this screen. here's where it is in the code. And like, he's showing me his gotcha, caveats, reason behind, why it was written a certain way. And he did that for several weeks, like, because it was a pretty large legacy code base. And I think that was actually like the best orientation to legacy code that I've had. So if you can get a manager to do that, or if you can get one of the senior devs to give you that, that is highly recommended.
Yeah, I can see that being very beneficial because, there's plenty of places I'm pretty sure they're like, here's the code, here's your desk, go ahead, jump right in, do what you do. And it's like, I don't know what I do. They're like, you'll figure it out.
Well, yeah, I mean, like most of the time they've had so much turnover, or the senior devs are so throttled, like with work, that they just don't have time to do a sit down with you like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a great. I think that's great advice going back historically through the tickets, especially if your code base, if they're using, GitHub's tickets or issues, or GitLab's ticket or issues, or Jira, or what's another one, Redmine. Going back historically, that definitely does give you some historical context for stuff that they might have not have written down in their documentation, but it's kind of self-documenting there with the tickets. So that's pretty awesome. That and pretty good. I think that's a great idea. I've heard a lot of
and
other.
At the very least, when you do that, I mean, you may not understand everything that's going on code side, but you start familiarizing yourself with the language. And so in stand-ups, when they say, because everywhere they have their own language of stuff that they talk about, that's the particular business domain. And that, I think, is sometimes harder to learn than the code. The code is usually pretty straightforward for the most part. It's learning, like, why the heck did we write this?
Yeah,
that's the tough part.
For sure.
Yeah, I think that was going to prompt me, and I said I wasn't going to do it, but I felt the follow up question of when you brought up a good point, and when you see some of the stuff, how well is the documentation written? I know that that depends on the culture that you join, but that's super important. From your experience, have you been to that point where have you seen really great documentation that kind of helps? Even if your manager kind of sat down and went through it with you, but like, was the documentation there to kind of like guide you along the way?
At that, the one where my manager sat me down, no. They had their trouble ticket system that they had. I can't remember what it was called, Track or something like that. And they also used Jira, but that one they did not have great documentation. I guess that's why he felt the need to give me the walkthrough. But I have been in places where they do a decent job. I mean, the trouble with documentation though is like things change so much. Like it's very difficult to stay on top of documentation. So I just come in by default expecting it to be out of date.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, that documentation always lags. I don't know any development team where the documentation leads. It's kind of like it's always the afterthought. Not saying it's a great thing, but that tends to be how teams trend for sure.
Makes sense. Yeah. Makes sense. So, did anybody else have any questions or anything to add on?
I'm curious too, just to throw out there, are there any other techniques that you all have for the community as far as like becoming familiar with a legacy code base that you inherit? Alan's had a great example with reading through the tickets. Were there any other advice?
For me, I tend to try and break down the code base that I'm looking at. So I tend to go like function by function, figure out, okay, what does this function do? What does this mean? Type of thing. And, build it out that way. So then I can follow the trail of how how a particular variable may be moving throughout the space, or just the overall general flow of the code, just knowing, understanding, all right, they gave me a general idea of what this file does, but let me, go through so I can understand, so that that generally helps me later on when someone's like, oh yeah, I need you to, fix this thing. It's like, oh yeah, I remember what that is. That's in such and such file, and then I can, easily get this ticket or whatever done because of that. So that's generally how I tend to go about it.
I think for me, it's mostly going through it and saying, why in the world did they write it like this? what in the world am I looking at? After a couple of those, then I think I start to kind of pick up. I'm just gonna be real. Like I look at it and I'm like, what? Kind of, that's my initial thought before I kind of, do a deep dive. But I try to follow the paper trail if there is one. And if there isn't one, then I'm hoping, and this isn't the case for all, every scenario, but I'm hoping that the dev that did write it, or had some familiarity with it, maybe they were on a team or something. I'm kind of going straight to them and asking as many questions as possible to kind of get like a gist of what all was, what was the thought process. Maybe was there something where you could kind of reference, because I know in previous experiences, and probably like our first one, there were some people that you could kind of heavy rely on to kind of help you, kind of see things to understanding. But then there were some people that you just went to go talk to, and they're like, oh, I wrote that when I started here. And they're like, I don't remember that, so don't ask me any more questions. And then, all that meant was, oh, I'll wait. I'll give you a chance to cool off, and then I'll come back and ask you again.
Oh, so you're that developer
You're
that's
that
just
guy.
like, hey, I have another question. You know what? But we should have gotten that from the way that you asked your questions here, where it's like, yeah, I have one more question. And then, someone answers, goes through, okay, that leads me to another question.
Yeah, I'm that guy. Don't give me a chance to ask another question, because there'll be another one.
In his defense, though, that code base we were working with, okay, you had parts of it were written in German. You had parts of it were written from developers who learned how to program in a time when variable names couldn't be more than like 8 characters. You had table names that weren't actually names. They were like T510 was a table name. What does the T510 table do? I still can't tell you.
Right.
I looked at that table for over a year.
Okay.
I have no idea what that thing did. But it had like 300 columns on it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And what's worse? Oh, go ahead. I don't want to.
No, that was pretty much. I was just trying to give you a little defense, because there were times when you're just like, this is literally German. I don't speak German. I have no idea what this is saying.
Yeah. I was just going to add to that like, they did separate their environments, but the developers that we work with, they were so like on edge that like they wanted you to fix it, but at the same time they didn't want you to break it. So you're like, I mean, what do you want?
Yeah.
So, Alan, I know you were trying to give him, a defense and everything, but I honestly feel like Clarence is that same guy at his current job with his current team. Like when he first got there, it was like, so I know I was here probably about 10 minutes ago, but I went back to my desk and I looked this thing up, and I'm looking at this other thing. What does this mean? What were you guys thinking about when it came to this one thing? You just kind of kept going down that trail.
I don't know if he remembers, but my project manager, she used to be like, Clarence, write it down. Don't come back here unless you wrote it down. And it's like, I did write it down.
Clarence, it sounds like you're still like in school with a teacher telling you like what to do.
Like, you're asking way too many questions. I'm not going to get through the lesson, so write down all your questions.
But that project's making me feel like I've been like blessed, because I haven't had anything that bad. I think
you've probably been blessed. We were in a unique situation. I mean, it's one that definitely, I think, and Alan might agree that, overall the process or the experience, it wasn't the best, but there are like small things that they did do that I really appreciated that I don't see anywhere else.
Okay. I will say I thought Visual Basic was bad, but this sounds way worse.
No. The thing that's bad is when like normally when you're working on new technology, like you can go to Google and 300 different options pop up. Like you go look this up and it's like, oh no, Google is that person sitting in that seat, like 2 rows down, and that's not even a good Google either. That's just like maybe give you
Everything comes with the story.
Yeah. Well, back in my day, you know.
So we've got some pretty good options, right? So reading through tickets, reading any existing documentation, we've got hitting up people that's still in the office, that anybody that's still around that's ever laid eyes on that code.
Yeah.
So I guess that's that knowledge share piece. JB, did you have one? Yours was more
I
so up in
answered.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
mine was just, going through the function by function and, figuring it out and
more like
understanding. But
tracing.
you didn't,
Yeah,
you didn't tell us
I'm.
yours though.
It's almost making it sound like, so for me, I guess I haven't really had like legacy code. I guess
Oh,
I've
you
had
really
code
been
that's
spoiled. Okay.
Oh
I've
yeah,
had.
you
I mean,
really spoil.
I've had code that's been old, but they've like the libraries are still getting updated and stuff. So it's not like
Hmm.
I've had system I've developed for systems that have been out there for a long time, but I mean it's I guess all of my team leads have been up for modernizing it and updating the services for it. So I've had those legacy systems that have
Good
had
night.
like a monolithic architecture, and then we've separated certain functions, and then and have slowly converted that down to different microservices. One of the coolest things for me is Python. It was Python as far as like becoming familiar with code. I remember the first time I sat down with one of our senior engineers, and he just showed me how to use the tracing module with Python, and I'm like, what? I can see this executing, and I can like jump from the different functions while it's executing. Like that's something I would have never just done on my own, but just like seeing
Hmm.
how you really become one with the code and like learning how things are functioning and how things are moving with that. I've definitely gone back to historically with I've also been blessed too with where most of my teams have had ticketing systems, whether it's Jira or some type of Redmine or some type of issue tracker where I could go back historically and see stuff from 5, 10 plus years ago. And so that definitely does help. So that when Alan said that, I could definitely like that definitely does help a lot. And also too, if I found that if a team doesn't really force the testing, maybe like making if you're able to have some type of testing module connected to it. I'm thinking some of these legacy systems that might be hard to do. That's what I'm saying. I probably haven't really worked on like these very, very painful legacy systems. It's been easy for me to just plug in some type of testing framework, and I can kind of do that to kind of help force myself to become familiar with how the services and the codes running. Um,
Hmm,
Gotcha.
that's good stuff. So,
So do you do test
oh, that
driven?
was
Oh, sorry.
no, you're fine. You were just segueing into my segue, which was, did you have any questions for us? So you jumped right in.
Oh yeah, I was about, Terrence was talking about test modules. My experience has been there's never tests.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
that's what
Everything's
I'm
all
just
saying.
about the
Like
do
I'm
test.
thinking I've been blessed because all of mine, somebody has somebody there's either there's no test modules there, but there's been it's built on top of some type of framework where I could easily have that test folder in there and integrate that into and this isn't going to sound like it's legacy code at all, but I can easily plug or switch that over to some type of CI/CD pipeline and stuff. But that's what I'm saying. Like I have not. I've been on code or systems that are old, but people have actively been working to modernize like or keep those things up. So a lot of teams. I'm one of the people too that I actively seek out the culture among a team, and I've had opportunities to choose or kind of like know kind of what I'm getting into as far as how teams operate. And if you're one of those team leads that are like, look, this, and they might not be upfront with you on the interview, but if I'm getting a vibe where it's, look, this code is old, this is legacy, this is how it is, we're not doing anything about it. That's just depressing to me, and I
Yeah.
kind of run away from that.
well,
I
that's
want
So
to
fair.
hear,
lucky.
I definitely get that. Yeah, I understand that for sure.
yeah. So all the teams like, even from a business standpoint, have been able to give the customer or stakeholders enough features, push out enough features to where they can push those features out, but we're still working on improving the system's technical debt, I guess, as we said before. And a lot of that is, okay, how is it operating? What's our visibility into the system? I love the DevOps mindset to where, I don't want our system admins or our developers having to remote into systems. What information can we get from that system, or have that system push out to us to where we're not logging into production systems? And so this is like, I'm big on that. The biggest thing within the DevOps mindset is improving. And so, okay, don't get me wrong. I know there are certain use cases or business cases. I think it's Walmart who still like looks for COBOL developers. Like they have some crazy system where
banks
I think
do Fortran.
yeah, there's like some companies who like look for some weird, like some very, very old systems, and those are use cases. I've never had the opportunity to inherit that, and I probably would try not to.
That's funny. That's funny you bring it up, because I think like up until like last year, I didn't know that they were still looking for Cobalt people, and it was actually a trend for a while that
you're
there were
getting
certain
money.
people were getting paid big money that if you
really
still
big.
knew it.
Because there's so few people.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of the community. So one of the meetups that I went to, that's where they kind of brought it up, and I was just like, "What? Like really? I didn't know that would be a thing." Like Google how to do COBOL. Try to get paid.
No, Clarence. Hey, he was filling out his resume right then, because SAP's language is derived from COBOL. So he was thinking like,
it can't be that bad, right?
Clarence, there would be no one for you to run and ask questions.
Exactly.
Literally,
you would be the Google guy.
They'd be like, "Man, you're perfect for this job."
I feel like I would just be crying every day.
Like, I don't get it.
Oh man. So did you have any other questions for us?
How do y'all feel about code duplication in legacy systems?
I despise it, because that means that you have to go through multiple sections of the code to make changes. Granted, you already know what the change is going to be, but you have to go and like seek out and find where all these duplications happen.
Right.
Yeah, like I just had a guy who, mind you, this was on a new system, and he's like, "Yeah, I could just write this out. It'd be real quick and simple." And it was basically him duplicating the code over and over and over again. I'm like, dude, if you don't just put this stuff in a list and like iterate over this list and just go that route. And he's like, I completely forgot about that. And I'm like, that's one of like the basic things you learn in school. Like, why? So yeah, I am not a fan of code duplication at all.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it either. But I guess my answer might be kind of like two-sided, because I guess like I don't like it, and I hope that people kind of stay away from it. But I guess I do kind of understand people who might take that route if they're like, pushed to do something like pretty fast. Because, a lot of times when you got like project managers or just managers kind of breathing down your neck, you might not have that time to kind of get that extra testing out to do something to make it a little bit more, flexible. So, that might be that kind of approach. And then of course, like we've seen it in our experience where it's just like, oh, we'll go back and look at it later. And that meant never.
Never do.
Yeah.
Know what that means.
Yeah.
Clarence is the reason that there's a lot of code duplication that is like jobs.
It sounds like if you get on the DevOps companies there, you get later all the time.
Yeah.
That's your technical debt.
Yeah.
So Terrence is basically telling me I need to be more picky. He's saying he's telling me I'm the janitor. I'm the janitor programmer.
Yeah. Is that what came out of that? I hope that's not what came out of that.
Yeah, it sounded like that.
I'm just messing.
Clarence, that's what it sounded like?
You're just taking off dirty jobs, Micro. What's wrong with you?
No, I'm not saying that. Really? That's how it came off?
Nah, I'm just kidding you.
It did kind of
sitting there confirming.
Yeah, you came off as the DevOps snob.
Yeah, it did.
That's what I got.
Yeah,
all I was exactly what it was. Like
I think what you guys have inherited was a lot harder. I felt as though if I was saying I worked on a legacy system, then I don't think I have that badge.
I got you.
I think that's like a badge of honor. I'm not. I hate that.
I don't know about that, but I'm just picking with you.
Yeah, I know.
So
I had
you
one more
figured out that
pick.
you don't like legacy code, and yeah.
I
So I'm
feel like
sorry if we hurt your feelings or anything, but yeah, we
see,
were just saying.
I feel like Terrence is sitting in like that press box, glass office, and Alan comes in. He's like, "You, what you mean you didn't bring the same mop from yesterday? Or the same broom?"
So I have to get out of my office and clean up. Working here.
Yeah, I thought that was your job, not mine.
But but some people really like the child, like how out like so all the shops I worked in, they've been Java based. Like either like it's like no coding at all. It's like site reliability engineer, like deploying the cloud. Y'all know I work with OpenStack, so OpenStack, or it's been Python or Java or JavaScript. Like I haven't like all those languages have pretty solid frameworks that people tend to start with whenever they're building whatever they're building.
Well, so I know I don't want to do it, but I do. That does bring up a good thing though. I guess to
Another
ask
question.
another question. No, it
Alan
brings up
has to go be
I
with his
know.
family.
I know he has to
never,
leave.
He's
He
never
has to
going to be able to
leave.
come back again.
But I wonder. I guess like my question though. You bring up a good point, and kind of like seeing the both. Kind of both worlds is that like, is it that we're misreading the opportunity that we're applying for? Like, are we not asking the right questions? Because it kind of seems like maybe there's some wording that we're missing that says that you're not going to be working on legacy code, and who knows, it could just be that it didn't say that at all, but you kind of come in the door and that's what you end up doing. So is it something that we're missing in the wording of like the recs and the opportunities that we see? Do you think they kind of misword it? Right.
Yeah.
JB obviously has taken on positions that have that.
I've kind of spread myself out through a bunch of different things. So like I had an office where it was Node.js, and that was the office where I was doing that complete code rewrite. And so it was really weird how that one went, where it was, hey, do you know Node.js? And I was like, nope, never did it. And they're like, are you willing to learn it? And I was like, sure. And so it was like, so we have this code. You can learn it first, then, assess this code that's here. And then we want you to do a complete rewrite and make it into a modular system. And I was like, okay, this sounds like a lot, which in the end it was. And it was me just doing all of this. So they gave me like my own dev system setup that was the same as the production version. And it was like, all right, just go ahead about it. And I sat there for like a couple months just going through and did like my whole little process of function by function. All right, what's going on here? What's going on there? And like then did my rewrite based on what I learned from the entire system and building out like a whole system document to show how the data was moving from one place to another and stuff like that. So so yeah, that was Node.js. I've done Java, I've done C, C++, Python.
And to anyone
Yeah,
out there, I don't run away from C. I just haven't. I'm
no, that's
okay
exactly what it sounds like.
if the right offer comes. Now, just don't want to close any doors here. Now I'm sounding like Clarence.
Yeah, hey man, it's okay to be a hopper. We've learned. we were a little. It took us a little while to kind of figure that out, but I definitely say like I feel like for me, it was probably one of the best decisions. And I mean, it was because of the shop that we came out of as well, that like we needed that in order to kind of grow and see something different because, we saw a lot of people who, we know a lot about legacy because again, we worked with people who had been there, when they were our age. And, when you're coming out of college, I mean, you learn a lot of wisdom and a lot of stuff from them. But at the same time, it's like, you go from seeing all of the new, latest and greatest to kind of seeing what, they've been doing, and you're just like, I didn't graduate to do this, so so it's one of those kind of decisions you kind of lean towards to do.
I learned something today though, Clarence. I didn't know you were working on legacy applications like that. You never
Yes.
talked about that.
Yes, my first software engineering gig, that was what it basically was, and it was an interesting ride. That's all I'll
You
say.
seemed happy. You always seemed happy when we did talk. I would have thought you were working on like all these greenfield deployments. Like, yeah, man, I just built out this new application. It's just me and my best friend, and we're coding it up.
I mean, to our customers at the time, we were doing some stuff that they hadn't seen, because a lot of their stuff, and Alan probably could vouch for it, that a lot of stuff that they were doing was huge access database. So when we did do kind of like the coding that we did, that was brand new to them. But at the same time, it was just like, as you said earlier, we're filling out a form, updating a table, and it was it. That was it. Like there's no other, there's not much else to it.
Wow.
So,
So when you guys did update these systems, was it like a big thing where it's like, oh, like we're about to change the system, or like push a new update to the system? This takes like 2 or 3 days. Is it like that, or is it?
2 or 3 days, you wish, depending on what you try to do.
We actually we had a very rigorous process that was it once a month or was it every 2 weeks? You
Every
couldn't
2
push
weeks.
code except 2 weeks was the minimum for any code change.
Yeah, and it took like
By
heavy
JB's
documentation.
eyes, JB is saying she's never worked on a legacy system either. If that's what this is. I'm just being honest. That's wow.
Remember all the documentation that it took. I mean, it was a heavy process environment, but like they made sure, like, I mean, this isn't as easy as clicking blame on GitHub and kind of seeing who did what. Like this is literally signing your life over, saying, I changed this line, and I did this, because when something breaks in the middle of the night, they got to tie it to somebody, so they're going to trace that paper trail to see who did it.
What?
Yeah, so it was actually like a physical paperwork process. The change management process there was insane. If you didn't have your changes done by the Thursday before the release, you weren't going to have enough time to get all the signatures you needed to actually get your code to a new environment.
Yeah.
So, and that code had to have gone through a dev environment and then a test environment. It had to get signed off by a test user. It had to have associated test cases with it that they would like go through and physically sign off on. And then you had to turn in that sheet to, there was one person in the whole organization that could approve. And she was like, that's her job. She looked at your sheet, did a test case, you've been through the environment, you have all the signatures. Oh, you didn't date this correctly. Take this back, and you'd be like, you're not going out to production. It was a very rigorous process. It was slow.
This is the first time I've heard of an office.
They took years.
Wow.
I remember calling her.
The first time I've heard of an office that like legit goes through the exact software like development cycle that you learn about in school. Like they didn't merge anything or skip any steps. It's like every single piece is just gone through.
That's the entire company organization is involved in the change management process.
Yeah.
It's no just developers and Git or like end users. That's like everything.
Oh, and then he didn't even mention, like, if it was an emergency change, if you had to make an emergency change in the middle of the night, you were on the phone with like 4 other people, and that was including your manager, the president, the business owner who owned the system. You had to have them on the phone, and I mean it's like 3 a.m, so you got to think like everybody's like waking up, wiping the crust from the eye, but no, like you got to make a decision right then and there, because you could really affect what the company was going to have going first thing in the morning.
Like, I'm glad we added this last 5 minutes in, because now I feel like this is officially a legacy code topic episode.
I am astonished.
But that's what I was saying. I mean, like, I don't feel like
all the jobs, that was the legaciest of all legacy code bases that I've worked with.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
See, but I feel like That's why I would love to hear from you guys' experiences now. Well, like on the modern applications, like on the more modern systems, do you feel like that made you all appreciate it more?
I think it made me worse. I feel like I don't even because I don't have those barriers anymore. It's just like push it, like don't even think about it.
Oh my gosh, we can't even save you from
So
yourself.
I can see that Clarence is just the guy that's just like code reviews. Who needs a code review? Straight to production. It's fine.
Because that lady that Alan mentioned, I always joked with her and called her my parole officer because she would always come get me before my change would go in, and it would be like when she would walk up, he's like, "Your change is broken," because we sat like close to each other, and he could see her walking, and I would be sitting down, and I was like, "What?" And by the time I looked up, she's there with the paper, and it's like, "Dang it, my change isn't going this week."
You know what?
This
I don't
week,
think I
gotta
ever,
wait for next month.
Yeah, I don't think I ever actually made it through on the first time. I remember I actually got so ticked off because like we were working a project and me and my teammate were working agile, and so we were like actually pushing out quite a bit of code frequently. And I just remember just getting just denied constantly. Like this lady was like, you put the signature in the wrong place, or like, like you didn't fill out page 2, or the date's wrong for this, or you're missing a test case, or you have a failing test case, or I didn't see your. Well, didn't each change have like a release number on it? You had
It was
release number. You had to like input that onto the each test case, like associate each change number with a test case.
Yep.
I've read about this. I've read about it, but it was like in the book, like the history section of the and that's what they were talking about. It was like they were like way back when they were like it was all the people who did not like Git. Like with the developers who were about to retire, they didn't like it. And they were like, back in my day, change management, we had a book, and there was a book, and then you had to sign. This is the book you guys are talking about.
Oh my
god! Yeah. It was so funny though because like when we first started versus kind of like when we ended, I think it was like you kind of picked up on like, oh, I don't want to write no more documentation than what I have to. So you push every change you could possibly think of in one change, request, because you were just like, I'm not testing that, because every time if there was I forgot, what did they call them? What was it called? It was like a task number, and each task number will be pushed into basically like a change. And so if that task number did not have any documentation on it, your bigger push couldn't even go. And that was another thing too, is that like everything, whatever you fix, it all had to go in like one chunk. There wasn't, and in some cases there were like small things that you could kind of break up, but for the most part, everything that you change, you tried to push as much stuff in one, push that you didn't have to make.
I've got to ask this. Did you guys have any type of development environment? Were you guys, because you guys test this on your own? Like, without messing up?
We had, yeah.
Okay.
The only downside though, and I guess we could probably talk about it, is that the data was not the same. So production data was everything, of course, everything up to date, but like the test environments, they were always like months old. So like if something new was introduced that you were coding for, you had to wait, because I forgot what the process was for that. You might remember, Alan, but it was a long time to even get new data in our test environment. Like it was quite the experience. That's all I can say.
That sounds like quite the experience. But yeah, that's yeah.
I think their rollover process to copy production data took several days, so they would not do it during the day. So it'd be like a nightly kind of run where they would push over production data. And they did it. I don't want to say monthly in the test environments. It might have been quarterly if you were lucky. And then in the dev environments, it was just garbage data that you made up. You just invented it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I remember the dev environment was garbage. You could write all your code there, but you couldn't really test it until you got to test, because they didn't have any good stuff to use.
Wow.
So, but yeah. So
did
that's
we scare the listeners from any legacy environment?
I think that
any legacy code like what they were doing.
I think that experience is atypical. I don't think that's normal, but it did give me, I think, a bigger appreciation for like what people consider legacy code in most companies today. I'm kind of like, it's not that bad.
Right.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's not that bad. It could be a lot worse.
Yeah, it could be a lot worse.
But I definitely think it's something to ask. Like, if you're in an interview process, we've always saying like it's good to have questions. I think finding out if you're potentially going to a type of system like that, if you're someone that's out there in the job market and you have options for sure, probably it might be something worth asking. I don't know. I do know people who do ask, and they ask about the languages and like what type of processes they have. So I think that's probably something to add to the interview list too, for sure. When you're in interviews and you feel like you're doing good on that interview, you know, it's like your turn to, if they ask if you have any questions, that's probably something to see if you can poke at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a great skill to have, because if you're not capable, I don't want to say if you're not capable of detecting that, but if you're not concerned about it and you really do think it would affect your day-to-day, you know, your vigor for your job, you really don't want to get into that situation, because it's going to just, you know, it's going to detract from your performance and possibly lead you away from the profession.
Definitely.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sure. I feel like if you've been in the game long enough, you could kind of pick up on something like that. But you know, for us, like, we were fresh, we just wanted to get in development. Like, you know, that was our chance to, you know, make our mark in the development world. So like, you know, it was a process that we didn't necessarily want to like experience, but at the same time, you know, because we weren't aware, or, you know, didn't have like that grounding and know like, oh, why would I want to go through all that just to do that? You know, it could kind of be tough if it's your first, you know, go round, at least to pick up. So
for sure. Awesome.
So
I love how the conversation ended, like how it went in that direction. We got all that good stuff out of you all.
Yeah.
I feel like I learned something off this episode.
Sorry, I learned a lot more.
So I guess, you know, that opens up for our listeners. You know, have y'all, you know, experienced a shop kind of similar to that, you know, or have you moved to that, you know, that glory road that Terrence was talking about earlier? You know, let us know. Give us a hint. You know, write in the comments. Let us know. You know, what kind of environment are you used to? Yeah, we're really interested to find out. So I guess, you know, without, you know, holding up too much time, I know you're gonna start charging us here shortly. We appreciate you stopping by, you know, and sharing your experience, and, you know, sharing the stories that you did. And again, thank you so much.
Definitely.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Welcome back anytime, Alan. Anytime. Come on back. Chat about something else.
So, guys, that's another episode of Devs Like Us. Thank you for listening. I'm Clarence.
JB.
I'm Terrence.
Oh, and before I forget, don't forget to like, subscribe, and
ring that bell.
See you next time.